Kodesh. We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Hilchot Shabbat, and we are up to Seif, Siman Shin Aleph, Seif Dalet, on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Bet of the regular prints of your Mishna Beruras. And Maran writes, we were discussing walking through water versus going around Amat Hamayim, jumping over it. Really started with the fact that the person should be walking calmly. Your walk on Shabbat should represent the Menuchat Shabbat. Im tashiv mishabat raglecha shelo yeh hiluchecha b'Shabbat ki hiluchecha b'chol. That even your walk should be different on Shabbat than weekdays. And we discussed, is it mutar to jump when it's necessary? You jumping over a small river or body of water in order to prevent yourself from going around and having to walk more, which is the halacha. And now Maran writes in Seif Dalet, Hayaolech lidvar mitzvah. If you're going for a mitzvah, you're not just taking a tiyul, you're not just going for a nice stroll on Shabbat, which is also a beautiful thing, said the Rama, but you're going for dvar mitzvah. For instance, Kegon la'akpil penei rabo, you're going to visit your Rebbe. Now the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah Daf Tet Zayin Amud Bet says a person is chayav, an obligation, at least during the course of the Chagim, la'akpil penei rabo baregel, to go visit your Rebbe in the Regalim. This is learned from the story of Isha Shunamit and Elisha Navi in Melachim Bet Perek Dalet, that says Madua at holechet hayom lo Shabbat velo Chodesh, and Gemara learns from that on Chagim and Yamim Tovim and Chol HaMoed, a person should be accepting the presence of the Rebbe. They should be going there to see them, and therefore it's considered a dvar mitzvah. That obligation constitutes a mitzvah, and hence the Shulchan Aruch says if you're going for dvar mitzvah, even not your Rebbe, but someone that is greater than you bechokma, yachol la'avor ba. You could even go through the body of water, even though that normally speaking we wouldn't want to allow that because it creates chashash schita, that you may come to squeeze the water off of your garments. But here we allow it. We're not going to, we bend this chashash, this concern, and we will say, well, a person will be careful not to do schita, and we let him go through the body of water, but it has its stipulations as well. Says the Shulchan Aruch, ubilvad she'aseh shinui. You have to do it in a different way, in order, as a reminder, not to come to schita. Kegon shlo yotzi yado mitachat sfat chaluko. You don't bring your hands out of the edges of your chaluk, of your garment that you're wearing. This is all a reminder to make sure you don't come to this concern that we have of a person being very bahul, very concerned about his garments, and come to squeeze them out of the water after coming out of the body of water. So it says the Shulchan Aruch is mutar with this stipulation to make sure you're not going to squeeze. Ve'asur lavor besandalo, and you can't go with your shoe, with your sandal, the kevan de eno yachol le'adeko ul koshro, because you can't. A sandal is like not a regular na'al, not a regular shoe that sticks to your feet properly. This is like a slipper. It's like a flip flop. Now it's not necessarily a properly tightened shoe, and therefore if you go through the body of water, what could happen is it's going to come off of you. It may come off, and then you're going to carry it in the Shudah Rabim, and therefore we don't allow it altogether. But a regular shoe that's tightened around your feet, that is fine. It says the Mishna Berura, the same halacha applies if a person is going to see his parents. You're going to see your father, you're going to see your mother. That kivud avayim very much is aligned with that as well. The ish ve'isha shavim b'mitzvat hakbarat panim. The Magen Avraham writes that it's not just for men, but even women have this mitzvah. Obviously, when the husband is okay with it, because the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Aleph, discusses that, and elsewhere, that a woman is dedicated to her family. That's why she is absolved from certain aspects of Kivud Av Va'em, where a non-married woman would be obligated. A married woman that has a husband and a family and children has to prioritize her own family, and therefore she would be more bound to her own family halachically than the family of her parents. Hence, we're talking about Birshut Ba'ala. Now, this by itself, even though that is mitzvah taseh shazman grama, this is considered a time-bound mitzvah, and women usually are patur from time-bound mitzvot. Maran Chida writes in Sefer Petach Enayim that the woman is not obligated to this mitzvah, not. But if she wants to go, she could go. So the women are not necessarily mechuyavot to go to, they're not obligated to go for hakpalat penei rabo, or parents. They're not obligated to go visit their parents or visit people who are considered their Rebbe and whatnot, because it's mitzvah taseh shazman grama. But if she wants to go, she could go, given that it works for her family's schedule. And only in a talmid, only in a student to his Rebbe is considered an obligation. Now, the Etz Yosef explains that a woman is patur from Talmud Torah, so you don't really have that relationship of Rebbe and Talmud, because even though that it's your Rav that teaches your Torah, the main thing of Hakpalat Penei Rabo Baregel, the takana that the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah talks about, is for somebody that is teaching you Torah. It's not because of the kavod of the status in the community that he holds, but because he's teaching you Torah. And that, because women are absolved from learning Torah in that same way as men, hence they would be patur from this mitzvah. Okay, so this is Maran Chida and others who agree with him. But on the other hand, the Pnei Yehoshua in Rosh Hashanah, and that mitzvah, and that takana, he writes that this is not considered mitzvah shazman grama, because mitzvah svara, a person is obligated to go respect the Rebbe, see the Rebbe every moment of the year. But you can't really do that necessarily every year. So Chazal made some sort of set time for it, but that does not render this mitzvah shazman grama to make someone absolved from it. You're giving a directive to make it easier, to make it more unified, but not that it's the time that causes this mitzvah to be there. It's not hazman grama. It's not that the time is causing it. It's that Chazal made it a little bit easier, says the Pnei Yehoshua. Hence, this does not even enter the question of mitzvah taseh shazman grama. Again, there's a lot to be spoken about over here in this, the Ben Ish Chai in his Sefer on Shas, in Masechet Sukkah, because this Gemara also is mentioned in Daf Kaf Zayin in Masechet Sukkah Amud Bet. We just had this actually last week in Amud Yomi. So the Ben Ish Chai writes over there, the Meikaradin, the woman, you cannot obligate them to this mitzvah because she is meshubeded leba'ala, because her priorities lie with the family, with her serving the family, with being there for the children, for their husband, and therefore, it's very much seems to be aligned with the Mishna Berura that we're talking about a case that the husband encourages this and is okay with it. It works for the family schedule, and that's really what the Ben Ish Chai says in his Sefer B'nayahu as well. So says the Mishna Berura over here. Again, there's much more to be discussed in this detail. We're leaving it for for homework for those who are interested, but this is again a mitzvah that is very important. Openemish kadol mimenu, not just your Rebbe, but even someone that's greater than you. La'afukei harav esel talmido. Rav does not go to his student, but peers go to each other. Chavrutas, someone that's bigger than you, greater than you in Torah. You go, but the Rav would be asur to go to his talmid. But if he's a talmid that the Rebbe also needs him, right? It's like a talmid chaver. That in some things the Rebbe needs his talmid. Hen mitzad chidudo v'chalifuto, either because he's extremely sharp and it adds to the Rebbe's chokhmah, talking to him and learning. Hen mitzad sheyeshlo shmuot migedolim acharim, or he knows a lot of piskei halachot from different gedolim that he has served and he has been around. Then the Rebbe could also pass through water to go to his students. So those are, again, here is very important to know the boundaries of this halakha, because you're doing something that otherwise would be asur, and it's only mutar because you're doing a mitzvah. Now, says the Mishna Berura in Ot Yud Bet, that even if you have a different path to take, even though that you have a different path to take, still is mutar to go through this, and you don't have to go around the roundabout way to avoid going through the water, because you're doing it l'dvar mitzvah. You're going l'dvar mitzvah, and therefore it would be mutav yoter la'avor b'mayim la'arbot be'iluch. Once it's mutar, because you're going for a dvar mitzvah, better to shorten your way than making it a roundabout, long way. Kevan dehu over לדבר מצווה. אבל האחרונים הסכימו שם דכיוון דהיכול להקיף טוב יותר להקיף מלעבור במים. This is what the Ramah says in Seif Chet, but the poskim disagree with it. They say, look, going through water is really not lechatchila, it's b'di'evet. So therefore, even if it's mutar for you to go, still you should be mindful that if there is another way to take, even though that it will elongate your path, still you would take the longer path to avoid going into the water. So that's the halacha, says the Mishna Berura. This is Ika Darka Acharini, actually is a very interesting sugya. We have it in Masechet Ketuvot. We have it in a number of places we have this discussion. In Masechet Avodah Zarah we have it in Daf Memchet, Masechet Ba'abatra we have it in Nun Zayin. The Gemara discusses, for instance, if a person should not be going through a path because there are women that are busy washing clothing by the river, which is a little bit of a compromised situation, because the area above their ankle is a little bit, has to be rolled up to be able to sit in the beginning of the river where the water is shallow. That's where they would wash the clothing. The Gemara writes you should not be going through that path if you have a different option. But the Ika Darka Acharina, and according to the Rashbam, comes out that even if you are very careful not to see anything that is not completely sanua, still a person would be called the Rasha, Nikra Rasha. If you take the chance and you don't go to the alternative path, then it's not a good thing. The Gemara also in Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Memchet, discusses a path that has a smell of Avodah Zarah, has Avodah Zarah on it, and you could go an alternative path that you should be taking. The alternative path, again, the question becomes, if the alternative path is longer, the Tosafot in Avodah Zarah say one thing, the Gemara in Ba'abatra seems to indicate a different thing. Chafetz Chaim writes about this, and so on. But again, for our purposes of Hilchot Shabbat, even though that the Ramah says that the alternate path is not a necessity if it's longer, you don't have to go, and you shouldn't perhaps go through the longer path because mutar to go. The poskim disagree with the Ramah, and they say you should take the alternate path and not go through the water, because it is again a chashash schita.
This is outside of Shabbat or during Shabbat?
The other Gemarot is outside Shabbat even. This is only on Shabbat. But again, the Nashim Avdot Kivisa can't be on Shabbat. They're not washing on Shabbat, of course. And again, it's irrelevant of Shabbat. It's an issue of Shmirat Inayim, of Tzniut. And the other one in Masechet Avodah Zarah is an issue of Hana'ah from Avodah Zarah, which is again, year round. It's not necessarily limited to Shabbat. Let's cover one more halacha over here. Halacha hey, ha'olech lidvar mitzvah mutar la'avor b'mayim af bechazara. When you go for a dvar mitzvah, so imagine there's no other path to make things simpler now. So you're going from point A to point B to visit your Rebbe. So it's mitzvah. So on the way when you're going, you're very excited, you're doing a mitzvah, you go through the water. Then, on the way back home, you get stuck by the water. Now what? Now I'm not going for the Dvar Mitzvah. I'm coming back from the Dvar Mitzvah. So are you going to be Matir Sofo Mishum Tchilato or not? This is actually a discussion also, not related to this necessarily, but on Halachot of Shabbat, a doctor that is on call on Shabbat, right? So, for going is one question that we have to discuss. Yidden, non-Yidden, mutar, eva, yes, no. But then you have the question, okay, now I'm at the place. I went, I checked this person, I saved their life, or I wasn't, whatever it was. Now, do I stay here until the end of Shabbat, or do I have the allowance to also drive back home and enjoy my family's meal with my family? So that is a heter. It's machloket between the poskim. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein famously said that we will let them, because if you don't, then they will not go. They'll hesitate to go to begin with, and you could be losing lives with the smallest hesitations in these scenarios. Easily you could be talking about hatzalah defashot. Imagine if every hatzalah call, they would not be able to go back home with their car. So you drive 5 minutes, which means an hour walk, right? You drive 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and next thing you know, you just missed everything of the Chag or the Shabbat with your family. So people would be very hesitant. They will wait for someone else to do it and so on. I still remember where we used to live. It became such an embarrassment for the fire department, because at the end of the year they were comparing the average response of the Hatzalah, which was less than a minute. It was 39 seconds, some very, very, almost immediate. Within a minute, they were there, and the fire department was way off the chart from that comparison, and because the officials were there at the yearly thing of Hatzalah, it became like a very uncomfortable situation. They really had to up their game. But then they presented that when you have a life-threatening situation, how every second could be thing. And when you have the numbers, you see a person is choking, a person that has this and that, and the other. You're talking about brain damage and heart failures and so on. Every second counts. So we don't want to play with that. Again, this is not our thing right now. In Siman Shin Chavchet, we're going to be discussing that at length in the halachot of refuah. But here we have this Shulchan Aruch that seems to be very much aligned with that. The ha'orech ledvar mitzvah, if you have a heter to go, because you're going for the bar mitzvah, mutar la'avor b'mayim af b'chazara. You could even go through the water on the way back, which you're not doing a mitzvah, right? In order not to be machshil him, it's considered a michshol that he's not going to go see his Rebbe next Chag. So therefore, we will allow him to go through water even on the way back. Again, he's not doing an isur. It's a chashash isur. Going through water is a chashash that we're concerned he may come to squeeze, to do schita. It's not be'etzem isur. So that's the way it's different than the other case of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, of course. But says the Mishna Berura, shepam acheret lo yelchu lidvar mitzvah. Next time, he's not going to go to dvar mitzvah if you don't let him do it. Kevan shelo yitiru lo lachazor. Rashi says this. So, says the Shulchan Aruch. in Seif Av. Ha'olech lishmor perotav. A person that's going for his own needs, right? He's going to protect his field from thieves, from animals. He's going to protect his fruits. So it's a financial concern of his own personal life, nothing to do with Dvar Mitzvah of others. So are we going to allow him to also go through water? Says the Shulchan Aruch, yes, mutar lo la'avor b'mayim behalicha avalo b'chazara. We let him go on the way there, but not on the way back. Because we're not concerned that if you don't let him to come back, that next time he's not going to go. Of course next time he's going to go. Because it's his money that he wants to protect. Now why do we let him go to begin with? The shmirat mamono nami k'tzad mitzvah. Maintaining his protecting his assets from imminent issues of, if you don't watch them, the people are going to be hefker. Animals are going to be there. People theft is going to happen, and so on. So therefore, it's considered also k'tzat mitzvah. It's also a little mitzvah. Umikol makom lo itiru b'chazara. We don't allow him to come back. De'eno dvar mitzvah kol kach. It's not such a dvar mitzvah, and also we're not concerned that he's not going to go next time. Of course he's going to go next time because this is his assets, his money. And if he decides not to go next time, so maybe it's not all that important for him, his money. It's not something that we necessarily concern ourselves with, to be matir something that's asur. Otherwise we don't want to do that if it's not on the way there. And la'avor b'mayim means ubilvat shelo yotzi adav. Still, you have to have the stipulation that we mentioned in the beginning of shiur today, that he tucks his hands in, and this will remind him not to come lidei schita, as we mentioned in Seif Dalet. That brings us up to Seif Zayin. Bezat Hashem, we'll continue this in the days to come.